Catherine Zeta-Jones is more than a celebrated actress. She is Hollywood nobility, a luminous flame that has burned through even its darkest tempests. From the first moment she appeared, audiences were captivated by her old-world elegance, her queenly grace, and a magnetic presence that seemed to set the screen itself alight. Her turn as Velma Kelly in Chicago didn't just entertain. It redefined power and allure for an entire generation. We recall the crimson lips, the precision of her every move, the fierce glint in her eyes. Yet behind the applause and dazzling lights was a woman waging private wars, smiling through storms, bleeding in silence, carrying wounds that never quite closed. This is not merely the story of a star, it is a haunting chronicle of resilience, love, and survival against impossible odds. For those who have ever been moved by Catherine, consider this a standing ovation for a life lived in defiance of defeat. You may be a fan, someone who has admired her beauty, her talent, her unforgettable roles. You might think you know her story, the first film she starred in, the character that made you fall in love with her. But what if I told you her very first battle had nothing to do with cameras or applause? It didn't unfold under stage lights, but beneath the cold glare of an operating room. Just below Catherine Zeta-Jones's chin lies a faint scar, almost invisible after decades of red carpet glamour. Yet behind that tiny mark is a story more haunting than most of Hollywood will ever know. Before the flashes and the Oscar gold, she was a little girl in Swansea, Wales, struggling for breath. A severe viral infection nearly claimed her life, and in a desperate race against time, doctors performed an emergency tracheotomy. That scar became her earliest badge of survival, the first in a lifetime of hidden battles. The mark never vanished. It simply learned to disappear beneath makeup, poise, and the glamorous image the world would come to know. Born on September 25, 1969, to a working-class family, Catherine was raised by a father who ran a modest bakery and a mother who sewed garments with quiet determination. Their life was simple: narrow streets, early mornings, practical clothes. Yet Catherine carried within her a spark that refused to be ordinary. She danced across the living room as though it were a grand stage, sang with a voice that demanded to be heard. Her parents saw the fire in her and fanned it. Then came a stroke of improbable fortune. The family won £100,000 in a national lottery, a sum unimaginable for their means. But rather than squander it, they moved to a better neighborhood, bought a pastry shop, and poured the rest into cultivating Catherine's talent: dance lessons, vocal training, stage coaching. She had that fire from the start, her father once said. We just gave it air. By age 4, she was performing in local church halls. At 11, she stepped into the role of Annie on stage. By 13, she was captivating audiences in London's West End with Bugsy Malone. But every curtain call came at a cost. Childhood afternoons replaced by endless rehearsals, long commutes, and the unrelenting demand to be flawless. In 1983, at just 14, she auditioned for the national tour of The Pajama Game under director Mickey Dolenz of the Monkees. She didn't simply win the part, she owned it. She moved to London, rehearsed with the discipline of a seasoned professional, and within a year, faced a choice most adults would fear. At 15, she left school entirely to devote herself to acting. It was a decision as beautiful as it was brutal. While other girls her age were scribbling in diaries, Catherine was learning to navigate rooms full of critics, closed doors, and relentless expectations. Years later, she would say, "People think I was fearless, but I was just trying to keep up." There was no plan B. And through all of it, the scar endured, unseen but alive. A constant reminder that her very first breath was a fight. Hers was a childhood sculpted by fate, sharpened by hardship, and carried with grace. In truth, she never had the chance to truly be a child. Her path to the stage was not lined with ease or luck, but with sacrifice and a single-minded passion that burned brighter than fear. After weathering the hardships of her early life, fate placed an unexpected card in the hands of Catherine's family: a £100,000 lottery win. For many, it would have meant security. For the Zeta-Jones household, it meant reinvention. They bought a pastry shop, moved to a better neighborhood, and poured their resources into cultivating Catherine's gift. By the age of 4, she was already singing and dancing in church halls. By 11, she was wearing the red wig of Annie. At 13, she dazzled in Bugsy Malone on the West End. Every stage felt like a battlefield. Every ovation was both proof she belonged and a reminder of the sacrifices she had to make. But nothing tested her resolve like the choice she faced at 15. Offered a lead role in the West End's The Pajama Game, she stood at a crossroads most teenagers never imagine. While her peers were worrying about exams, Catherine was weighing her entire future. Stay in school and take the safe road, or abandon it completely to gamble on the only dream she had ever known. She chose the latter, not from recklessness, but because, in her words, there was no plan B. It was a leap that would terrify most parents and break most futures. But Catherine was already living far beyond her years. For her, it was not rebellion, but surrender to destiny. Hollywood, however, would not welcome her so easily. Her first film role came in 1990 as a cinematic Scheherazade in the French production 101 Nights. Like so many dreamers, she believed there would be magic, that this would be the moment the world opened its arms to her. Instead, reality struck like a heavy blow. The film collapsed at the box office, selling fewer than 740 tickets in France, grossing under $254,000 and finishing 78th for the year. It wasn't just a stumble, it felt like a warning. Catherine had barely touched the silver screen before being pushed to its edge. She chose to return home, not to retreat in shame, not to hide from the spotlight, but to rebuild, to come back stronger. And indeed, that's exactly what she did. From 1991 to 1993, she found a new rhythm in the darling buds of May. The show made her a household name in the UK. Critics embraced her, audiences adored her, and she began proving that even those who falter in their first act can still earn a standing ovation. But she refused the easy road. Hers was lit only by faith, faith that had been tested, battered, and nearly broken, but was only beginning to reveal its strength. When she finally arrived in America, her resume glimmered, but Hollywood was unmoved. To casting directors, she was just another pretty face with a British accent, a TV darling from overseas who didn't quite fit on the big screen. She took any role she could find. Splitting Heirs, 1993, Christopher Columbus, The Discovery, 1992, The Phantom, 1996. Each was meant to be a stepping stone, yet each felt like another reminder that her dream was slipping further away. The reviews were cold. The phones stayed silent. Every audition came with the same quiet verdict in the air. Not quite enough. It was a bruising chapter. She would later confess, "I started to think maybe they were right. Maybe I didn't have what it took." Each rejection cut deep, not because she feared work, but because for the first time, effort didn't equal success. Then, as if scripted by fate, Steven Spielberg noticed her. Some say it was from the young Indiana Jones Chronicles. Others point to the 1996 miniseries Titanic. Whatever the source, something about her presence stayed with him. One call was all it took. Suddenly, scripts arrived, doors opened, and in 1998, she landed the role that would immortalize her, Elena Montero in The Mask of Zorro. It wasn't a gift. She fought for it against fierce contenders like Penelope Cruz, Shakira, and Isabella Scorupco. She trained relentlessly in swordplay, horseback riding, and dialect coaching. She bruised her ribs, fell from horses, and bled from her hands after hours of sword work. "I wanted to earn it," she said. "Not just be pretty in a dress, but hold my own next to Antonio Banderas." She refused a stunt double. Every slash, every spin of Elena's flamenco-infused skirt was her. When the cameras rolled, she didn't just perform, she erupted. The Mask of Zorro was more than a hit. It was a $250 million phenomenon on a $95 million budget. Overnight, Catherine became a global name. Her face graced magazines, talk shows, and red carpets. Yet, even at the height of her fame, she remained grounded. I was terrified I'd wake up and it would be gone, she admitted. She kept moving forward. In 1999, Entrapment with Sean Connery gave the world an iconic image of her weaving through laser beams in a skin-tight black suit. In 2000, she stripped away glamour for Traffic, earning a SAG award and a Golden Globe nomination. And then came 2002, the year she became Velma Kelly in Chicago. Pregnant with her daughter, she danced, sang, and stole the film that would win Best Picture. 10 days before giving birth, she stood on the Oscar stage, gold statue in hand, baby bump proudly cradled. I carried more than a child that night, she later reflected. I carried every role, every rejection, every doubt that had ever haunted me. And I let it all go. In the dazzling, almost unreal glow of Hollywood, few romances have captivated public imagination quite like that of Catherine Zeta-Jones and Michael Douglas. On paper, it was the perfect screenplay. Two Academy Award-winning actors, separated by continents and generations, yet bound by an invisible thread. But what began as a storybook meeting would evolve into one of the most fiercely tested, emotionally layered unions the industry had ever witnessed. This was not a love built solely on red carpet moments, but on shared loneliness, mutual sacrifice, and the quiet, unseen fears that tether two people together. Before Michael Douglas ever entered her orbit, Catherine had loved and lost. Her first serious relationship with British television presenter John Leslie began with youthful thrill. But as weeks became months, the charm eroded under the weight of jealousy and controlling bursts of temper. What started as lighthearted romance began to feel like confinement. Catherine, barely into her 20s, realized she was diminishing inside a love that left no room for her own dreams. She ended it with quiet resolve, but the emotional bruises lingered. Soon after came Scottish actor Angus MacFadyen, best known for Braveheart. Their connection was instant, electric. Engagement followed in the mid-1990s, and for a while, it seemed certain she had found the man she would share her future with. Yet, before the wedding could take place, it all unraveled. No one ever truly knew why, perhaps not even Catherine herself. Some loves burn bright but fast, she would later say. Others you carry like a shadow for the rest of your life. Then, in 1998, under the soft seaside lights of the Deauville Film Festival in France, destiny stepped in. Michael Douglas, already a two-time Oscar winner, the son of a Hollywood legend, a man whose name carried decades of cinematic weight, met Catherine, fresh from her breakout triumph in The Mask of Zorro. She was 28, glowing with the thrill of a career on the rise. He was 53, seasoned, his fame as familiar as his face. 25 years apart, yet their paths collided as if two separate novels had converged into a single final chapter. Introduced through mutual friends, they quickly discovered they shared the same birthday, September 25th. But their first real exchange was far from romantic. Michael approached her and, without preamble, declared, "You're going to be the mother of my children." Catherine, startled, found it more presumptuous than charming. She offered a polite smile, excused herself, and mentally closed the book on their encounter. Except the book wasn't closed. Days later, while filming Entrapment in Scotland, she received a bouquet of roses with a handwritten note from Michael, a mix of humor, apology, and sincerity. It was enough to spark curiosity. Phone calls followed. Brief exchanges stretched into hours-long conversations. For 9 months, they spoke across time zones about family, childhood memories, personal fears, and the parts of themselves rarely shown to the public. Catherine hadn't set out to fall for a man 25 years older, but over time, the icon disappeared, replaced by the one voice that made her feel seen. On New Year's Eve, 1999, the two found themselves in Aspen, both laid low by the flu, wrapped in blankets. Michael, without fanfare, pulled out a vintage 10-carat diamond ring. Tissues on the nightstand, tea cooling beside them, she said yes without hesitation. It wasn't glamorous, but it was theirs. When she discovered soon after that she was pregnant, the joy multiplied. On November 18, 2000, Catherine Zeta-Jones and Michael Douglas were married in a $1.5 million ceremony at the Plaza Hotel in New York. She wore a custom Christian LaCroix gown. He wore a proud, almost boyish smile. Their 3-month-old son, Dylan, was cradled in Michael's arms. Guests included Hollywood royalty: Tom Hanks, Steven Spielberg, Jennifer Aniston, Sharon Stone. Yet beneath the grandeur was a woman who had fought long and hard to trust love again. The wedding became a media spectacle. Exclusive photo rights sold to OK magazine for $1 million. Still, paparazzi from Hello magazine managed to capture and publish unauthorized shots. Catherine and Michael sued, but years later, the ruling deemed the intrusion minimal harm. The verdict felt hollow. Her dream wedding, once a sanctuary, had been breached. For the first time, she understood the full weight of being a celebrity wife and the vulnerability it brought. Motherhood transformed her. Dylan arrived in 2000, followed by daughter Karis in 2003. Determined to shield their children from relentless Hollywood scrutiny, the family relocated to Bermuda, where Michael had deep roots. For 6 years, they lived in peaceful retreat, trading premieres for school runs and scripts for sunlit mornings. It was the first time in my life I didn't hear the word action for months, and I loved it, she said. But even paradise could not silence the whispers, the constant questions about whether their marriage was real, whether it could last, whether she was too young, too ambitious, too visible. Some nights, Catherine would look at Michael sleeping beside her and quietly wonder, am I enough for this life? Is he enough for me? Through gossip, headlines, and the storms that would follow, Catherine anchored herself to a single truth: the choice to stay. Love is not about perfection, she once reflected. It's about endurance and forgiveness, and waking up the next day still choosing each other. For Catherine Zeta-Jones, the true wedding was never the one gilded with crystal chandeliers and celebrity applause. It was in the mornings after, in the decisions made in silence, in the small acts of loyalty that never made the papers. Her love story was not flawless, but it was unshakably real. And for a girl from Swansea who began with nothing but a stage, a voice, and a scar, that was everything. It's so easy to romanticize stardom, to imagine a life forever bathed in golden light, wrapped in designer gowns, and greeted by applause that never fades. But when the lights dim and the crowds disperse, what remains is often a shattering silence. For Catherine Zeta-Jones, that silence became deafening. In the years after her meteoric rise to Hollywood royalty, peace did not arrive. Instead, an aching loneliness and a slow unraveling began to shadow her every step. After the birth of her daughter Karis in 2003, she and Michael sought refuge far from the flashing cameras, moving to Bermuda in search of tranquility. On the surface, it was paradise, with endless blue skies, warm ocean breezes, and the soothing rhythm of waves. But beneath that postcard-perfect life, a silent storm raged. Catherine began to feel an unshakable heaviness. Severe mood swings would strike without warning. Days of energy were followed by crushing fatigue, moments when even getting out of bed felt impossible. She perfected the art of the public smile, masking a spirit quietly buckling under relentless pressure. I had to smile at premieres while I was falling apart inside, she would later admit, words heavy with raw vulnerability. The quiet thunder of a diagnosis finally came: bipolar II disorder. But instead of relief, she felt the suffocating weight of stigma. In an industry obsessed with perfection, she feared the whispers, the sideways glances, the pity she could not bear. So she endured in silence, mothering, acting, posing, performing, doing everything the world expected, but nothing that allowed her to truly be herself. Michael, too, was carrying his own pain. In 2009, his eldest son, Cameron, was arrested and sentenced to federal prison for drug offenses. The headlines were merciless. Catherine, already fragile, was forced to comfort a devastated husband while shielding her own children from the harsh glare of public judgment. Then, in 2010, came the blow that nearly broke her: Michael's stage 4 throat cancer diagnosis. Hospital corridors became her second home, their cold light reflecting off the thin blankets that barely covered the man she loved. She sat through endless hours of brutal chemotherapy, holding his hand as if her grip could anchor him to life. He had once been her unshakable protector. Now he trembled, too weak to speak, his eyes clouded with fear. And as if fate had not tested them enough, another storm erupted. In a candid interview, Michael linked his cancer to HPV, a sexually transmitted virus. The media pounced with ruthless hunger. Overnight, their fight for survival was buried under a tidal wave of gossip, speculation, and piercing humiliation. Friends said Catherine felt exposed, betrayed, as if the last shred of her privacy had been sold to the highest bidder. By 2011, the weight was unbearable. Catherine checked herself into a mental health facility in Connecticut. She did it quietly, seeking not attention, but survival. When the news leaked, she made a choice. She would no longer hide. "This is a disorder that affects millions of people," she told the press with unshakable will. "I'm not ashamed. Mental health is not something to hide." In that moment, her pain became power. Letters poured in from fans thanking her for breaking the silence. She had transformed her private battle into a beacon for others, turning what once felt like shame into fragile hope. Yet, healing was not a straight line. By 2013, exhaustion pushed her and Michael to take time apart. The tabloids screamed of scandal, but behind closed doors, it was simply two people trying to breathe again. "We needed space to heal," she said. "Both of us were broken in different ways." They lived separately for a year. And then, without spectacle or headlines, they found their way back to each other. That quiet reunion, uncelebrated and unphotographed, was perhaps their bravest act. It was not about grand gestures. It was about choosing every day to stay. Catherine emerged from those years a woman forever changed. Her eyes carried more shadows, but also more fire. She spoke openly about her bipolar journey, challenging Hollywood's silence. "We talk about cancer openly. We talk about heart disease. Why not mental illness?" she demanded. Her voice carried the weight of survival, the authority of someone who had stood at the edge and stepped back. Bipolar disorder remains part of her life. The storm never fully disappears. But Catherine no longer hides from it. And perhaps this is her truest legacy. Not the roles, the red carpets, or the awards, but the courage to stand in the open, scars and all, and say to the world, "I'm still here." By 2017, the winds in Catherine's life began to shift. Cameron, Michael's son from his first marriage, was released from prison, and soon after, he became a father. For a family that had carried a decade's worth of fractures and shame, this moment felt like the first ray of light breaking through a long, relentless storm. Catherine, who had witnessed every tear and every scar, described the feeling as if hope itself had quietly walked back through the door. But life, unpredictable as ever, had another trial waiting. In 2018, new allegations of sexual misconduct surfaced against Michael, stirring up old rumors that Catherine thought had been buried for good. It hit like a lightning bolt in the middle of calm waters. Publicly, she stood firmly beside her husband, her poise unshaken. Privately, friends say her heart ached in ways she could not easily name. At 49, she no longer had the energy to pretend every day was perfect. "I didn't sign up for perfect," she would later admit. "I signed up for love, and love means you stand still in the chaos." Though the investigation faded into nothing, the wounds remained. Yet, somehow, they endured. By 2020, life at home changed again. Dylan and Karis left for college, and Catherine stepped into what she called our third act. She was 51, looking into the mirror and seeing not the woman defined by red carpets or film credits, but someone who had learned the art of quiet resilience. The house grew quieter, yet never felt empty. Mornings began slower, with sunlight spilling across the kitchen table. Conversations stretched into hours, meandering between memories and dreams. They traveled not for publicity, but for the joy of discovery. They cooked together, shared wine, and laughed over burned dinners. One friend recalled walking into their living room and seeing them barefoot, swaying gently to an old jazz record. "It wasn't glamorous," she said softly, it was peace. In a rare interview from that year, Catherine reflected with a calm certainty, "I've been many things, daughter, wife, mother, star. But now, I just want to be still. I want to be whole." For her, peace wasn't the absence of storms, but the grace to keep dancing through them, hand in hand with the person who had weathered them by her side. Today, Catherine moves between their breathtaking $33 million villa in Mallorca, Spain, and their Manhattan apartment overlooking Central Park. The Spanish estate is more than just a home, it's a sanctuary. Olive trees frame the horizon, the air smells faintly of the sea, and centuries-old stone walls seem to absorb the quiet. Here, she feels closer to the earth and closer to herself. Even as the headlines grow quieter, her presence remains magnetic. In 2022, she captivated a whole new audience in Netflix's Wednesday, stepping into the role of Morticia Addams with that signature blend of elegance and shadowed mystery. Reinvention, for Catherine, isn't a challenge, it's a craft she's mastered. She may not appear on every red carpet now, but when she does, the world still stops to look. Away from the film sets and studio lights, Catherine has quietly built a second empire, one born not of scripts and stage cues, but of texture, scent, and her own vision of timeless beauty. Her lifestyle brand, Catherine Zeta-Jones, offers home decor, luxury bedding, cosmetics, and fashion, each piece reflecting her taste for elegance that feels lived in, not just displayed. Endorsements and partnerships have brought in more than $20 million, but her worth, now estimated at $150 million, has never been measured by numbers alone. In 2010, she was appointed Commander of the Order of the British Empire for her contribution to drama, an honor she described as humbling, almost surreal. But when asked about it, she said, "A beautiful home is only beautiful if it holds peace," a sentiment that sums up everything she has fought for. Her marriage, once strained to its breaking point, now rests on deeper understanding. She and Michael, born on the same day 25 years apart, have found a rhythm that allows space for both freedom and connection. Sometimes both partners need their own sky to see the same stars, she once mused. They live part of the year apart, yet still call each other home. Her role as a mother remains at the core of her life. Dylan and Karis, now in college, are carving their own paths, but Catherine's presence is constant. Her Instagram offers glimpses into this quieter chapter. Dinners at the family table, board game nights, lazy mornings with jazz humming in the background. These are the snapshots of a life rebuilt, not for show, but for living. Her battle with bipolar II disorder still lingers, a shadow she has learned to live alongside. She keeps a disciplined wellness routine, yoga, meditation, a macrobiotic diet. "It's not about chasing youth," she said at 50. "It's about honoring survival." Her beauty is now the kind that comes from self-respect, not surgery. Even as she tends to her present, she's thinking ahead. Trusts, wills, legacy projects, whispers of plans for her family and for the arts in Wales speak to her desire to leave something enduring. She mentors young actors quietly, offering scholarships and advice without fanfare. When asked what she fears most now, she answered simply, "Wasting time. That's the only thing I don't have an endless supply of anymore." Her story carries its share of shadows, whispers about her marriage, moments of public collapse, the weight of stigma around mental illness, yet she wears them with the posture of a seasoned dancer, strong spine, soft eyes. She no longer feels the need to prove anything. She lives instead with intention and grace. Perhaps the most unforgettable image of Catherine isn't from a film at all, but from a candid photograph, standing barefoot on a balcony, hair tousled, linen robe loose, coffee in hand, the morning sun catching her cheek. No makeup, no performance, just a woman who has survived, who still stands, and who still shines. From a young girl in Swansea clutching a lottery ticket of a dream, to an Oscar winner beneath the golden lights, to a survivor who has danced through every storm, Catherine Zeta-Jones's life has never been about luck. It has been about persistence, resilience, and the courage to keep writing her story. She once said, "Mental health is not something to be ashamed of." In saying so, she gave millions the permission to breathe, to speak, to believe in the possibility of healing. Her legacy is not just in the films she made, but in the lives she has quietly touched, in the way she made survival look not just possible, but beautiful. If you're still here with us, still listening to her journey, then perhaps you understand. Survival is not the absence of pain, but the decision to live fully despite it. And Catherine, more than anyone, has proven that truth. Picture this. The lights fade, the curtain falls, and she walks away from the stage, barefoot, stepping into the glow of a golden sunset. There is no applause now, only the quiet sound of the ocean, the warmth of the wind, and the peace of a woman who has made it through. Fade to black.